Yeah, she's very like the teacher in Whiplash. So if you needed a parallel, she is a very strict teacher, very old school, and she was like that only to me. However, she was not like that to other kids. Um, she was a taskmaster, and definitely, I would definitely say that she's. It's a good thing I had my guru inside the house. Otherwise, it would have been impossible. She definitely the best guru that I learned from. I don't think I had a choice, so I had to do what my mother said because she was a disciplinarian. I think that was the whole thing. It was not as if children will automatically do what their gurus or teachers ask them to do, and which is probably why they get in a lot of those hours that people say, right, those 10,000 hours of practice. I think that's how that happens, especially in families where the parent itself is the guru. So I don't think it was not as something that you would consciously cultivate when you're very young, and you are it's part of your life and it's part of your discipline. So you do it because you're supposed to. That's how it is. It's not. I have to be honest and say it was not something that I willingly and automatically did that. Yeah, I was not that child. I think that way, that concentration was probably not a problem. My mother knew probably how to tailor make the class for me and my attention and my capabilities. So if I finish the task at hand, I could just move on and do my own thing, right? Um, so I guess the parents who believe that it's difficult to make their kids concentrate are usually those who are not there, who don't know music themselves and haven't done it themselves. So they're probably a parent who want to inculcate art into their child, and that is a common uh, problem. I actually don't have an answer as to how you can make that happen in a child when you don't have the knowledge as to how you, because a lot of us know how we did it, so we can tell our kids. But when somebody just goes for a 1 hour or a 45-minute class and then they come back and then they have to practice on their own, that impetus on their own is a difficult thing, especially when somebody else is not guiding their practice also. As much as learning is important, guiding the practice early on is also very important, which is why a lot of gurus used to say that you practice in front of me. Unfortunately, that's not happening these days. So it's difficult. I definitely understand it's very, very difficult. I think there are a lot of studies which say that it helps brain development. It helps in a lot of areas. A lot of people use music as a way of calming themselves. It's therapeutic. For a lot of people, it helps them concentrate on the other probably very right brain activities that they might be doing. So I think for me, I would definitely believe that, I mean, figure out how art works for you. A lot of people, yesterday I did a concert for somebody who's basically they're a Gujarati family and they only listen to South Indian songs, and they asked me to sing for their family event. And I was quite stunned to see that they knew all my songs, that even songs I didn't, people listen to. And they asked me to sing that. And it's interesting how music can actually cross the linguistic barrier and people would just, follow their heart and that sort of a thing. So I think art, dance, music, whatever it is, I think it's completely up to the perceiver as to what they are drawn to, I think. Yes, parents can become teachers. I think that's how it's worked, right? All through time, more musicians and artists that you see today, their parent would have been their first guru. Take any playback singer, take any artist today, performing artist today. The parent would have been the first guru, and then they would have gone and learned from other people. After that, I think the initial thrashing off of all the basics are done. And that is the most important phase. It is possible for the parent to become the guru as long as they know how to compartmentalize and understand that there is no playing around that. It's very difficult, I guess. I don't know anything about parenting. So I don't know how gurus have done it before. I think which is when I think one parent took the nurturing role, and then the other parent would take the authoritative guru role. So in my case, I didn't have a father, so my grandparents took in the nurturing role, and while my mother became the strict disciplinarian. Lots actually, especially the gender bias and the divorcees bias that society constantly threw at our face. All the house owners, I think, except one or two house owners in our entire life, most of them have been really terrible human beings. Neighbors have been so nosy, constantly believing as if it is their job to safeguard your safety. So all of that, and having had to take these additional pressures, and I think a lot of that pressure, my mom also unnecessarily took onto her own head. But she always used to say that "Ooruku oppichu vaazhanum," you will have to live in a manner to prove something to society. Now, I think after a lifetime almost of doing that, I see there is no point. Society is mostly they jobless anyway. At least those who talk and keep talking about others. So I think at some given point in time, I start saying I care a rat's ass about what society thinks and believes and has an opinion about me. And I think also perhaps that came from a place of privilege and comfort, because there is a certain standing that I have achieved in life, and I have a spouse. So I basically I have ticked all those boxes, right? So I think most people who have a spouse have the right, um, are able to do a lot of stuff. Versus vis-a-vis somebody who's not married, because I see the divorce stigma, I see the single woman stigma still in society. It's pretty pathetic. It's difficult. It is very difficult. But I think we all have to, at some given point in time, stop caring about this external stuff and keep trying to see if things can work out the way that we plan. Because I think it doesn't work out for everybody in the same way. So, కొంచెం కష్టం. There is no one size fits all in this sort of a thing. Actually, I think Hairama Kya Hua and Nature Lada Matam, which made me decide that I want to be a playback singer. I also did not like the general toxicity in the Carnatic music scene, and I didn't want to be around that. And I found a lot of, I didn't like it. I was training to be a Carnatic classical singer. I saw how it was, how Madri, I mean, I just didn't like it. I just didn't want to be around a lot of these people who were presenting themselves in a certain way and then pretending to be all godlike and then actually being very toxic and pathetic individuals. And for me to apparently you had to do this kura kumudu to this entire system and their grandparents and keep calling them great people when they are not. And I was like, I don't want to be in that space at all. And somehow I decided when I was 12 that I want to be a playback singer and I want to get a break from Rahman. So my mother was like, "What are you ranting? It's not going to happen." But it did happen. I think for whatever it is, whatever childlike decision I had taken at that point in time, I think the universe conspired to make it happen for me. So I'm grateful. I'm fortunate that way. Not really. There is no personal favorite. I think sometimes this concept of getting attached to a song and then saying that this is my favorite is very very difficult for an artist. I think because the effort is anyway the same. So I really don't have. So Trolanis, I think I've been kind of used to from 2010. I think if you're generally a person with an opinion, regardless of gender, you're going to attract a lot of trolls. I've seen that shaming is gender agnostic, but for women, it's a little more abusive. We get an additional bonus of rape threats and sexual assault threats and a lot of this, I'll do this, I'll do that, graphic rape threats. All of this happens to women on social media. And this is women across the board, across many things. You just needs to have had a face that people recognize. And then there are constant troll armies that come to you and all that. I think it comes from this country having lost its scientific temper and education and its incapability of having debates in a dignified manner. It basically shows how an intellectual degradation has happened to the people of India, where people don't even know what to say except I'm going to, rape you as a response to an opinion they don't like. So it's just degradation, moral and intellectual degradation. And no matter what the political ideology of some people, people will come and call you random stuff based on what they perceive you to be. and they want to put you in a box, and when you don't fit into any of these boxes, they don't know what to do, and then each different troll army comes and decides to try and pigeonhole you into something, and it doesn't happen. So for me, I think at least a lot of us have normalized that abuse, which is kind of sad because nobody is taking any effort to change it. No political party is taking an effort to actually crack down on this kind of nonsense because they're funding. They need these troll armies uh, to debate for them. So debate, as if not even debate, abuse for them basically. So if I think if it had started at the top, maybe things would be different. But who knows? I think mentors for females are basically a very, very difficult and an alien concept. I don't think I've had really a mentor guiding me at every step of the way or giving me advice on stuff like that. So mentorship, I'm not so sure, but I think when at rare given points in time, I've asked Remanta for some advice, and it has happened considering how busy the man is. But I think the mentorship in the true sense of the word, I don't think it has happened to me. No.
Who do you credit your success to?
I don't consider myself successful, so I wouldn't have an answer to that precisely. I don't think I'm successful at all, or I don't know. I don't know what is success. I've not defined success for myself, so I don't know. No, yeah, because I realize that there is no one advice that I can give to everybody, and there is no one thing that I can say. But if you really like art, stay in art for the sake of the art and not because you want to make money and you want to. If your end goal is fame and popularity, a lot of people have said that it's not worked. You need to be in the music space because you want to be in the music space. And even over and above that, there is that X factor, which, or destiny, or whatever the heck that people call it. Because I've seen people who adore art and who adore music or adore dance and who have not made it. And uh, I don't know what to say, right? So I I think perhaps at in this point you'll have to, at least with art, you'll probably have to take the Gita seriously and say, do your duty and don't expect results, as difficult as it might be. I think it's sending these voice notes of happy birthday in the Jesse voice, or singing happy birthday has been a part of my life for a very, very long time. People would just say, "Can you send this to make somebody's day special?" So I thought, why not make this into a charitable effort? And thankfully, it worked out. I didn't even think I'll end up raising so much money. I thought, okay, maybe if we end up raising a lakh or two, great. So then I didn't keep a ceiling as to the minimum amount of donation should be this or anything like that. So perhaps that helps. Yeah, I've had one donor donate to 20 families. I've had people donating 27 rupees. So all of this has happened over time, and I just got lucky with the idea. And perhaps it's also the timing because it was COVID, even those birthdays and anniversaries, they couldn't order cake. So the only way that things could happen was through one of these videos, right? So whoever knew about it and whoever thought it would make a difference came across to me, and they would send me song requests and I would send it to them. So I think it was a lot of things that came together at the same time. So I think they also like the fact that not only were they donating to a beneficiary directly, they were also getting something in return. So that in addition to the feeling of altruism, they were getting something in return, which is something tangible. So I guess that way it took care of both the socialist and the capitalist angle. I think the entrepreneurial journey started basically as a need because I realized that singing wasn't paying bills. So Blue Elephant and translation was what paid my bills for a very long time. I was personally translating from German to English, and then we started translating for a lot of other companies. Then we started hiring interpreters and translators for these exercises. And at least for me, I think um, starting skincare was a thing of passion. A lot of people saying, "How do we get this in India?" And I thought, is there an opportunity there? So usually, if I see an opportunity, I try and pursue it. So I guess it comes from the drive of doing that. I'm very driven in those ways. So yeah, but I think at least Blue Elephant was started out of a very, very, very real need. Perhaps because my spouse, my partner is also an artist himself. I think somehow we make it work. Whatever needs to take priority at that given point in time, it takes priority, and whatever needs to, um, take the back seat for a little while, that takes the back seat. So it's not something that we sit and plan and say this is what we'll do for these many minutes or hours a day. So I guess it's not that big a deal. We are going on the flow. I think, I guess. Yeah. Especially I think for my work, and especially, especially during COVID, I think I've been on my gadget all the day, taking requests, making videos, and sending it to people. I think this gadget addiction is real. We have to make a very, very conscious decision. Otherwise, the next generation is just going to observe us and do exactly the same thing. So the gadgets we are as such, no, not really. Some days I get very tired of it automatically, very drained. I'm like, I don't even want to see a gadget. So my phone will be ringing and it'll be messages would have come and I would not have responded for hours together. I also do that. And I don't apologize for it anyway. So I think apologizing for taking my time off, or even announcing in advance saying that I'm going to be off is something that I know I don't do. But overall, I think I have somehow slowly deciding to cut it down, because even your books have become a gadget supported stuff, right? So I try and read. We are listening to books now in audiobook format. So I think for me, um, at least for me, it's quite a challenge, because a lot of us are recording from our phones and our laptops, and it's become so much a part of our lives, especially the artist life, that making a clean break from it is quite something. But I think social media breaks are important for all of us and for our mental health. Basically, I don't think there have been any recordings for films, basically because nobody is going to shoot, and hence there's no work. And studios also have not been operational. So I think it's basic human nature to survive. And I think when humans need to find a way, they'll find a way. How has it evolved? I think it's too early to tell. There have been Zoom concerts, and people have gotten used to this thing of performing via Zoom and performing digital concerts. So a lot of this is going to be, it will be quite something to see. Is this here to stay, or is it going to evolve? We all have our own questions. We have no idea how this is going to work out actually. But I think these remote recordings and people having to travel lesser and lesser has probably come up. But people are also missing that human interaction with the other artist and the musician. So that's probably affecting the creative aspect of it. So it'll be interesting to see how this takes shape as we go. Hi, I'm Chinmay. I pledged to stay away from gadgets for an hour as a part of Parent Circle's Gadget Free initiative, and use the time to connect more with my family and friends. I urge you to do so too. Join this amazing Parent Circle initiative on November 20th from 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. and enjoy a gadget-free hour. Disconnect to reconnect.